Okay, guys, I wanted to share this again just because it is a little confusing what's going on, and I wanted to tell you that I did fly this the other day. If you saw my other video um, explaining it, that was before I actually flew the Delta Tail mix here. So, just to recap, if you haven't seen the other video or whatever, I'm going to explain this a little bit more detail, so maybe longer, so bear with me. Basically, the way I flew it the other day was just the Delta setup for the tail, and that's your stabs that move in Delta configuration. You know, that's both the elevator control and the aileron control, and that's all it moves too. That's full deflection. I only have it 50% on the radio, but when I say full deflection, the stick is basically all the way down on the radio here, and that would do some crazy loops right there at high speed. I didn't even barely move it to fly it, and she flew like a dream. This plane, the way it's set up now, is amazing. Probably one of the best EDFs I've ever flown as far as like smoothness, no real nasty stall characteristics, plenty of power in turns and climbs. It's a very stable aircraft now the way it's set up now. I haven't tried any of the other mixes, but I'm going to probably do that next. What I'll probably do is I'll throw on the wing mix, which basically just is going to turn on the ailerons here. I shut them off now because I want to show you how I did that. Okay, so just to reiterate from before, we have, there's 8 total servos on this aircraft. The nose wheel steering servo and the rudder servo that you can't see in this view, but it's on the other side. It's just on the other side. It's attached to the rudder. Those are the only servos in this whole plane that are wired together. There's a Y cord that comes down from here, goes into the other cord that comes from the other servo from the nose of steering. They wire together, and then they plug into the rudder port inside the receiver. Okay. The other servos, the rest of them, the 7 servos, is one for each surface. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then, of course, I already said 7 for the rudder service. Okay? So, that's basically how I have it set up. Now, if you want me to tell you the orientation of them, that's not really hard to do. If you guys know about how a Delta is actually mixed, it depends. You may have to set it up first as far as where you want the servo to be and how you want to do it on your radio, because what it is, you have different combinations. You can have your aileron servo on the left stab, or elevator servo on the right, that's how I have it, or you can have the elevator servo over here and the aileron servo over there, and basically that's the only 2 combos as far as orientation goes inside the port. So basically, you would say you want your aileron servo on this side, you would plug it into the aileron port in your receiver over there. And same thing, if you want your elevator servo over here, you plug it in the elevator port. So the reason why I say it depends on what you're doing is because some receivers are different, or you may have, make sure you check the reversing on your radio. I start off as normal, just to, just for ease of, if everything's normal, and then you may get lucky and stick the correct port and actually get the correct direction. Okay, because when you mix them in Delta wing, you can't on this radio you can't actually change anything in the Delta. Like you can't. There's no curve. It's a hard mix, which I'll show you on the radio. That's the first thing I did. I don't know if you can see this or not, but here we go. So I click the enter button on this Wakira 2801 Pro, and I go to mode select, and then you don't go mode select. You go to wing, and then you hit enter. And then see, you'll have flaperon, V-tail, and delta. You want delta on, and keep in mind when you turn delta on, these other ones you cannot even. I don't even think you can go to them. No, it won't even allow you to go to those until you shut that one off. So flaperon and V-tail, you can have those together, or one or the other, but delta is by itself, and the reason for that is because an actual true delta wing doesn't really have a tail. The only thing it has is it has a vertical stab. I mean, you can have two vertical stabs, but you'll have, you know, just your rudder. A V-tail is mixing your elevator and your rudder servos together, because they basically act together as elevators, kind of like a delta, but it's a V-tail. And then when you use your rudder, they act together for rudder. So we don't even have to worry about that because we don't have a V-tail. We have a conventional vertical stabilizer, and then we are two horizontal stabilizers. Okay, so once you get that set up, there is no, if you see, there's no, it's just the wing, you turn delta on or off. That's it. That's all you do. So now the rest is up to you. You plug in, you know, just do a trial and error. Just plug in, like I have it set up for aileron on the left, elevator on the right. So once I plugged it in, and let's say, for example, say it didn't work, right? So you're like, okay, say it's doing like something weird, like say you're pushed down and it goes up. Okay, so then you go to your on here, and then you go to your mode select, and you go to your reverses here, see? And you go to your aileron. Now you see on here, I actually have aileron in reverse mode, and that in order to get it correct, that's what I had to do. Now that doesn't necessarily mean you're reversing your direction. With delta, it could be reversing the orientation as well, as far as like it'll do something weird. Like if you go to normal, let's do that right now. So I'm in normal now. Now see I'm in normal mode, and see when I pull up on the elevator, it actually rolls to the left. So delta, you know, it's very weird that way. Think of it as like an algorithm where you have to, you know, try this doesn't work, try this doesn't work, and you go into like a sequence until you get what you want. So I'm going to put it back to where it was, so reverse, and now it's going the correct direction where they're both moving up and then left and right. And like I said, you may have to mess with your orientation physically too. Like say if you can't get the combination by reversing your servos on your servos on your radio, then go ahead and take them out and plug them differently on your receiver. Okay, now this is the easy part. I know it's maybe a long video and maybe a little complicated, but this is the easy part, because all you're doing is you're just trial and error. You're just like, okay, I plugged it in this way, I tried reversing both of the servos, it didn't work, I tried reversing aileron, it didn't work, I tried reversing just elevator, it didn't work, and then you just move it around, and you'll find the right way. It's going to happen. There's only a few combinations that are possible. So with that said, that's all you have to do. And it's a net, what it is in most radios. There might be a radio out there that I don't know about. I mean, there could be a radio that's very common I don't know about. But for this radio and most radios, when you type in delta mix, they're assuming that you have a delta wing, which is the whole wing. You know, the delta is no tail, like I said. So this whole wing right here would come back, and you'd have one surface on this side, and then same thing on that side. So you basically only have two surfaces on your wing, which is also your tail as well. So if you could see how that works with the delta, you know, this is going to move up, and this is going to move up. That'll pitch your nose up, and then vice versa. This goes down, both of them go down, and then they have to work as ailerons too. So one will go up, and one will go down, or they'll be somewhere in between, whatever your input is on your right stick. Okay. So, the way I flew it that day was amazing. I was only using this tail. I didn't have any rudder inputs at all. This thing flew like a dream. I can't believe it. I can't say it enough. So now going back to a little bit more, or going forward to some more complicated stuff. To do the program mix, since this thing has 5 mixes. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and right now I have them all off just to save for confusion here. Okay, now the way I have it set up is for my wing. Okay, I have this one is an AUX 1, which is flap on your if you look at your receiver, it'll either say flap or AUX 1. I just happen to put it on this wing and I got it right. Again, you're gonna have to do kind of a trial and error with this as well. So you go AUX 1, and I have AUX 2 on that wing, okay? So now I go to this first program and I turn it on, and I see what it says, and it says flap to aux2. So on the radio it's going to say flap also, but flap is really aux1, or like I said, I don't want to confuse you guys. Just remember, sometimes they call it flap, sometimes they call it aux1. Okay, it depends on the radio or the receiver. Just remember that. So basically, flap and aux2, you want to mix those together, and I always have them on, which means it's constantly on. As long as I have this mix on the radio, which you don't want to be changing it on or off in the air. Once you have the mixes on, they stay on when you're flying. So basically, I mixed aux1, which is the flap. I did a curve, a mixture curve, from this wing to this wing. And what that does is, when I move this down, okay, with the flap trim here, I have a flap trim on this radio. Some radios will have a switch that you just switch down, and then it will go into whatever setting you have it. That's fine, but this actually has just increments. So I just hold this down, and as you can see, I don't know if you can see the other side. Probably should move this so you can see it. There we go. Okay, see if I move this flaps down, and that's all the way down, I can make them go back to neutral, or make them go into almost like a spoiler-ons. They go up, and they don't move. And I only have that mix on, but still they don't move with this. That's just flaps, okay? As long as that mix is on though, and I move this switch here, they're gonna move together like a flap, okay? So now we're gonna go to mix number 2, and I'm gonna turn that on. Now this one is the aileron and flap. Now what this does, and if you'll see, I don't have it on yet because I have it selected to my gear switch here. So if I flip the gear switch down, it turns it on, right? Now as you see, it's moving with the ailerons, but see how it's only the one side moving? Because I haven't turned the other program mix on. So you actually have to say, okay, I want to mix my aileron. Now when I say aileron, I'm not talking about the aileron servo, which is on this side. It's not talking about the aileron servo. It's actually talking about aileron on your stick. So basically, if I, want that wing surface right there to do work like an aileron, I gotta set it up here on this program mix as aileron to flap mixture, and then I set my switch for the gear switch. So it's not constantly on like the other program. Okay. Now you ask yourself, well, why don't you want it constantly on? Well, it was a new flight parameter. And I'm glad I didn't turn it on when I took off, because I had plenty with just the tail. I had plenty of aileron roll. It was amazing, and this is actually gonna be my next thing, is to turn these other program mixes on. Okay, which I'm gonna talk about 3 because they kind of work. They kind of go together. Okay, and again, I only have them set. Excuse me. I only have them set to 50%. You can't really see that on the flap or on this mix here. But I set the curve so it's only 50%. It's going to give me 50% of its full travel. So if I go full left, it's only going to give me 50%. And I've actually flown this aircraft in the conventional sense, where these were just acting as elevators, and these ailerons were actually all wired together there. And I actually have flown this aircraft with 50% ailerons, and it was plenty then too. So I haven't yet flown it with the 50% flaperons, or excuse me, stabilators, and the ailerons together. Okay, so let me turn that other wing on. I'm going to go to program mix number 3. I'm going to turn that on, and now that's aileron to aux2. So remember we said this is aux1, which they call flap. This is aux2. Aux2 is just aux2. Okay. So I mixed. Remember, the first mix was this wing, or this flap to that. That was to get our flap control up and down. Okay. That means whatever I move this flap, obviously the servo that's called flap's going to move, but I also want that one to move. So that's why I did the first program mix into that. And then the second one was the aileron stick to move. I want to move that. And yes, you can set the curves also. You can set them opposite of each other, so I can make it go one way or the other. So if you get it wrong, you can reverse the curve to go the other way. Okay. And then program mix 3 is the right is aux 2. So as you see now, they move like they're supposed to. So I got the delta mix in the tail, and I got the wing. Okay? And like I said, I can shut my wing off. If something goes wrong, I take off. I don't like it. It's too crazy. Got to fix it when I get down. I can shut that off. And I know it flies good like this. I've tested it. Flies like a freaking dream, like just with this tail in the back, okay? So now, you ask yourself, well, what else do I want to do? I have vector thrust on this aircraft, okay? What's my other program mix? Well, that's pretty easy. Go to program mix 4, and that's going to be my elevator to gear. Now you're saying to yourself, why the hell? What the heck is gear? Why would you have an elevator? Ever have an elevator working with your gear? Well, I don't have the conventional landing gear down here that go up and down, so I can utilize my gear channel for something else. So that's what I wanted to do. I said, well, let me use my gear for my servo down here and mix it with my elevator. So yes, in a sense, this is a gear servo down here. Now a gear servo, I mean, it's not like your gear servo that's going to raise a gear up and down. There's different types of gear servos, but it's just a normal servo. On the radio, it doesn't know any different. It just knows it as gear. Now here's the tricky part. Here's the really tricky part. Now, that doesn't work with my gear switch. That gear switch was just this is now just a switch. It's just called the gear switch. This switch, I just assigned it to turn on the wings, okay? Now I assigned a different switch to turn on my thrust vectoring, okay? But before I do that, this is very, very important. Before I do that, I have to go back here and I have to go to stick, or I have to go to input, okay? And input basically assigns your switches to different functions, right? So I actually have my gear switch inhibited, not the switch itself, but the actual what it does. So for example, if I did have landing gear, this would say gear to gear, which says, okay, now I have my landing gear parameter, and what that does is gear is either